Be talking to us from 3:30 to 4:30. May I request her to please come on stage? Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm losing my voice, which is a great way to be on the first day of a festival. I'm also a little bit discombobulated because I thought I was talking to young adults, and I can see more older adults in the tent, and I can see young people. I was also planning to speak in Hindi and in English. Now I'm confused. I don't know which language to speak in. And mainly, sorry, I'd prepared something where I wanted to have an interactive session with younger people about how we make moral judgments. I think by the time we get to my age, certainly, we've become quite determined in the way that we judge people, whereas young people are sort of more open at this point to what is potentially right and what is potentially wrong. So I'm going to just have to make the session up as I go along, so bear with me, please. I wanted it very much to be interactive because this is the one venue that is officially called Samvada, which means dialogue or conversation. But okay, I'm not sure that I can plan it. Okay, all right, let me start over. So what I was going to do with the younger people was to take stories from the Ramayana, the Valmiki Ramayana, the Sanskrit Ramayana is the text that I work with. It's a text that I've worked with for 30 years, so either I'm very stupid or I'm very smart. That stupid because I couldn't find anything else to work with, smart because it's like, well, you found a good thing, stay with it. So my translation of Valmiki came out nearly 20 years ago, but in that translation, I'd translated very, very little of the Uttarakanda. And that was because my publisher, Penguin, had asked for a 700-page book. And 700 was a magic number, not for any mystical reason, but simply because that's what the binding could hold. So when I had to do some editing, I thought, let me edit Yuddhakanda, because in the war, everybody, this one dies, that one dies, that one dies, that one dies. And let me edit Uttarakanda, because in Uttarakanda, what we get are stories that we've already heard before, stories that we've read before in the preceding books. Now, all these years later, 20 odd years later, I realized that those stories were not told in exactly the same way. I mean, I knew this even then, but I thought it wasn't important. And now I think it's become very, very important because it's in the Uttarakanda that we are confronted with the idea, really, of a good person who does bad things, right? So my question for this afternoon was going to be, what happens when a good person does a bad thing? And conversely, what happens when a bad person does a good thing? Yeah? So, you know, if a good guy does something bad, especially in our current environment, we're very quick to say, oh, he did one bad thing, he's now a bad guy. But when the bad guy does something good, we're like, mistake. Right? He didn't really mean it. He's still a bad guy. So I wanted to examine that with reference to two of the stories that we find in the Uttarakanda, both of which, of course, involve Rama. Now, what happens in the Uttarakanda is basically nothing. Yeah, Rama comes back. He is triumphant. And all the monkeys and the Rakshasas and everybody comes with him, and nobody wants to go home, and everybody is sitting around in the court, and, you know, the sages come, particularly Agastya, and Agastya starts to tell Rama all kinds of stories. And one of the long cycle of stories that he tells Rama is the Ravana cycle. How did Ravana get to be the way he was? And it's all about Ravana's uncles, his mamas, and his chachas, and his bhais, and, you know, kaka, whatever, or Ravana's whole family. But while Rama is listening to these stories, there are two incidents which occur. One of which everybody knows, which is he sends his spies out into the kingdom. That's what kings do. Yeah, if you read Arthashastra, if you read Chanakya's Arthashastra, that's one of the things you must do. You must keep yourself informed of what's happening in in the city. So his spy, whose name is Bhadra, what does Bhadra mean? Beautiful. Yeah? The spy called Mr. Beautiful goes out into the city and comes back. And Rama says, what are they saying about me? And they're like, oh, they like you very much. You know, everybody's very happy. You're a great king. They're delighted to have you back. They don't have my big book? Only that? Okay. All right. Okay. All right. So Bhadra comes back and he says, but there's one thing that's making them very uncomfortable. And Rama is, what is that? And he says, well, I'm a little shy to tell you. And Rama's like, no, 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 you can tell me anything. And he says, well, they're gossiping about Sita. They wonder what she did when she was with Ravana for all those months. And so Rama says, what are they saying? And they said, well, they're just surprised that you've taken her back. Right? Okay. So on the basis of that, Rama decides that he has to exile, he has to send into exile, he has to banish, he has to abandon his wife who is at the time pregnant. Everybody's nodding, like you know the story. Is this a good thing to do? How many people say yes, it's a good thing to do? How many people think Rama was right in sending his wife away? What is Rama's situation? He's come back to rule a kingdom. He's been gone 14 years, right? People really don't know him. He left as a young man. He's come back as a middle-aged man. His father, Dasharatha, was a great king who ruled wisely and well and justly for 60,000 years. Nobody remembers that. What they remember is that Dasharatha was so in love with his young wife that he sent his son into exile because he had made a promise to his wife. So Dasharatha acknowledges his dharma as a husband before he acknowledges his dharma as a king. Rama is in the same position, right? He has to choose between his dharma as a king, which is to take heed of what his people are saying, or he has to respond to his dharma as a husband and say, I love my wife, I trust my wife, right? But he chooses to be a king rather than a husband. And he tells his wife, actually he doesn't even tell his wife, he calls Lakshmana, and he says, you know, Sita, she likes going into the forest and she's planning a picnic and she's going to visit the wives of all the sages. So tell her you're going on that picnic and then just leave her there in the forest alone and come back. And Lakshmana cries, he can't bear this, yeah? And, but that's what he has to do because Rama says, do not argue with me, I am the king. I do not take well to criticism, yeah? And he sends Sita into the forest, and then of course you know what happens. Valmiki finds her, or she finds herself at Valmiki's ashram. Her sons are born there. Valmiki teaches Lava and Kusha the story of their father, the Ramayana, and they come back and recite it to him. Okay, so that's one very big thing that happens in Uttarakanda. There's another very big thing that happens in the Uttarakanda, which is the killing of Shambhuka. Do we know the story of Shambhuka? Does anybody know the story of Shambhuka? No? Okay. Shambhuka, okay, one day Rama is sitting and ruling his peaceful kingdom. Everything is wonderful, you know. The wonderful things about Ayodhya, it's prosperous, it's clean, the rains come on time, the crops grow as they should, nobody dies, nobody has sickness, nobody has suffering, because it's all based on Rama's virtue, on what a good guy Rama is. One day, to his court comes a Brahmin. This is very important, that he is a Brahmin. And he's carrying the body of his dead son. And he says, Rama, my son has died for no reason. There is something wrong in your kingdom. And Rama's like, that's impossible. I'm such a good guy. I even threw out my wife, right, because you gossiped about her. How can there be something wrong in my kingdom? And the Brahmin says, my son died for no reason at all. Yeah, he wasn't sick, nothing. He's just dead. You better find out what's going on. So what does Rama do? He sends his spies out again, right, into the kingdom. And they travel far and they travel wide and everything is perfect. The other very important thing about why Ayodhya is such a perfect city is because all the castes do what the castes are supposed to do. Yeah? Brahmins don't behave like Kshatriyas, Kshatriyas don't behave like Brahmins, unlike Mahabharata, right, where every Kshatriya is behaving like a Brahmin and every Brahmin is behaving like a Kshatriya. Drona is born a Brahmin, but he becomes the greatest warrior of his times. Bhishma is born a Kshatriya and spends his life like a Brahmin, including being a brahmachari, right? So Mahabharata is not quite sure. Ramayana, that doesn't happen. Ayodhya, never. Everybody does exactly what they're supposed to do, and they do it right. So the spies are looking here and they're looking there, and everything's just dandy. And then they come across Shambhuka. And what is Shambhuka doing? Shambhuka is doing tapasya. He is performing the most severe austerities possible. What's the problem with that? Well, Shambhuka is performing austerities that only Brahmins are allowed to perform. He's doing the tapasya that is Brahman tapasya. Okay? The problem is Shambhuka is an untouchable. Yeah, he is outside the caste system. And so by the performing of those austerities, he is violating some kind of cosmic dharma. Right? So the spies come back and they tell Rama, you know what? We found an achut doing Brahman tapasya, right? So you got to do something about it. So Rama goes to where Shambhuka is and he says, why are you doing this? And Shambhuka is like, why not? I felt like. And Rama's like, that's not a good enough reason. You're not allowed to do this. And he cuts off his head. So those are the two ethical questions, or the complex situational questions that I wanted to present my missing young adults with. But I think, why don't I present them to you all? How do we judge Rama's behavior in these times, in the Uttarakanda? He's not the Rama of the early books. He's not the prince who was in exile. He's not the prince whose wife was taken away from him. He is now the king. What are the duties of a king? Yeah, and are the duties of a king or a ruler the same as the duties that we impose on ourselves? Okay, somebody's got to answer me now. My voice is stopping. So would anybody like to respond to the questions of what happens when Rama does bad things? Is Rama now a bad guy? Is Rama now a bad king? Yes, please. Yay, a hand. Can you hold on just 1 second? Can you check for that Ramayana in the Penguin bookstore, please?
This is not there.
Not even in Penguin?
No. Penguin, I
Yeah, just check. Sorry, I'm still trying to get my book so I can read from it. Yeah.
Of course. I don't think the question comes in as to whether or not he's right or not at this point, because I believe given the ethical system that prevailed at that time, when you compare it with the current one, of course, ethically, we frown upon the actions he's taken.
Frown upon what? We frown upon what?
We frown upon the actions he has taken that you just stated with our current ethical system. But I think at that point, to objectively measure his action, the question that should be asked should be whether or not it was a wise action rather than right or wrong.
Ah, okay. All right. This gentleman is suggesting that we say that we judge the action as wise or unwise rather than right or wrong. Yeah? What we're actually talking about here is dharma. What do we think dharma is, right? Is dharma an idea that exists only in the epics? Does it exist in a time that we no longer inhabit? Is dharma a modern concept? Is dharma something that you and I think about? You know, I mean, we'll say very casually, or we will learn from the movies to say very casually, "Arey, ye to mera dharma hai." Arey, what does that mean? Mera dharma hai, kiska dharma, right? Are we still working on the basis of Kshatriya dharma or Brahmin dharma? Do we actually think of who we are before we make the decisions that we do, before we act in the ways that we do? I mean, anybody in this here, right? We are simultaneously mothers, fathers, brothers, sisters, wives, husbands, friends, right? So at any time when we make a decision, we are saying, okay, I'm going to now be a wife, right? My husband is not well. I can't come to JLF, right? That would be my decision, my dharmic decision as a wife. But I have a commitment to JLF. So then I'm choosing my public dharma, right? When I decide to come to JLF, despite the fact that my husband is unwell, means I'm giving up my Stri dharma, yeah, to do my JLF dharma, whatever you call it, yeah. I mean, how many people have made choices? You are not listening to Nasruddin Shah, right? You have come here to listen to some like lady talk about Ramayana, which you were not expecting in any case, right? So every time we make a choice, do we actually think about the engines of that choice, right? And that's what I think. That's where I think we need to. Analyze or think about or explore what Rama was doing when he made those choices. Is there anybody here who thinks Rama did the wrong thing by killing Shambhuka? He did the wrong thing. Okay, how many people think Rama did the right thing by killing Shambhuka? Nobody's daring. Oh, good for you. You think he did the right thing. Excellent. Why? Why did... Can she have a microphone, please?
His duty as a king was to adhere to, I mean, it wasn't ethically right what Shambhuka was performing.
Why?
Because that's not his dharma. That's not how his kingdom works.
Okay, all right. I have a response to that, but I think somebody in the back wants to say something as well. Oh, lots of hands going up. Very good.
In the book, I've read this book, and
Which book?
Exploring Rama's Anguish.
Oh, my goodness. All right. Yes.
And in the book, you talk about the fact that Rama's father was always influenced by the lady. And maybe due to that reason also personally, Rama did not want to be sounded like he is also being affected by Sita. So maybe it's not about the kingdom thing and all. Maybe personally he did not want to be related what his father did, and due to his father's wife, he was out of the kingdom and all.
Okay, so he doesn't want people to criticize him the way they criticize Dasharatha, saying, "Arey yaar, wo biwi ke piche itna mara hua hai ki, sab
He
galat
did not
kar
want
raha
to
hai."
be
Yeah.
related to his father again in terms
Exactly.
of the kingdom.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's my argument in that book. But I want to go back to Shambhuka. This young lady is suggesting. Is somebody else going to talk about Shambhuka as well? Yeah, lots of Shambhuka hands in the back. Can you get them a microphone?
Ma'am, I'm
There's a
speaking
guy
here.
in a grey sweatshirt. There's another.
Ma'am, I'm speaking here.
Where
Ma'am,
are you?
Here, ma'am.
Ah,
I just
Sorry.
want to say that what Ramchandra did, when he went to Lanka, he knew that man called Vibhishan. Vibhishan was also a Rakshas. And he also did the same thing. All the time he prayed to the God. And even Ravan has written a Shiv Tandav Stotra.
yes.
He was also writing like Brahmins. He was a Rakshas, from Rakshas school. And it is a kind of contradiction in the actions of Ramchandra that there he's supporting that man, Vibhishan, and when he comes back to the kingdom, then he listens to the voice of the people, and there he just he kills that man. So there is a contradiction here.
Absolutely. Well, there's another problem with Vibhishana. We think Vibhishana is the good guy. Yeah, but Vibhishana is a Rakshasa, right? But, he knows the Vedas and he's always doing puja, part and this and that. What does Vibhishana do? How does Vibhishana become king of Lanka? He betrays his brother. He's a Gaddar. He betrays his brother. He goes and says, listen, I'll tell you how to get into the kingdom. Indrajit is performing a sacrifice over there. You cannot let him finish the yajna, because once Indrajit finishes the yajna, he's going to be super powerful, right? He takes Lakshmana to where Indrajit is and says, yajna ko roko. Right? So again, we have a good guy doing a bad thing. This young lady's been trying to say something. Yeah.
Into that, you say that Vibhishana betrayed his brother. But when we talk about Mahabharat, now Bhishma, his heart lied with the Pandavas, but he went and helped the Kauravas because he was bound by duty. He is wrong at that point because he did not go with his heart, like what he thought was actually ethically, morally right, and went with his duty. And now we're saying that Vibhishana, who did go ethically, morally right, but betrayed his brotherly dharma, unclely dharma, etc., etc. Isn't that in itself a contradiction?
I think what it proves is dharma is very difficult. The Mahabharata tells us always dharma is sukshma, subtle. You can't catch a hold of it, right? So I think rather than looking for contradictions per se, what we have to look at is places where people transgress what we expect them to do, right? Or if we look at their actions, which are supposed to be good actions, you know, he became Rama's ally. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't have been able to defeat Ravana. So in relation to Rama, Vibhishana is a good guy, but in relation to his own brother, Vibhishana is not the kind of brother you would want to have. I don't think. I wouldn't want to have a brother like that. But I want to go back to the Shambhuka question. Yes, in the Grace Right Church. Yes.
Hello?
Hello.
Hi. Okay, so A, I'm a girl.
I'm
Okay.
so sorry the lights are in my eyes.
It's alright. Okay, so the question is like, what defines good or bad? Who defines it? Humans do, right? So what was Ram doing? He was a ruler. So a ruler generally tends to follow rules. So that's what I was thinking. But in the case of Shambhuka, he was a man who was just expressing free will, you know, which was not something that was very well practiced in those days. So in his case, Shambhuka wasn't doing anything wrong. He was just angering people because he was different. And in those days, no one really understood that different does not necessarily mean wrong.
You mean they were just stupid back then, and
No,
now we know
they were
everything.
just so used to following order that that's what they knew and they didn't know better. You know what I mean?
So they were kind of stupid. Now we're cool and 21st century, and we're feminists, and we question things, and, you know, we know that the important thing is the question, not the answer. No, I mean, I do see what you're saying. I think that okay, is there anybody else who wants to say something about Shambhuka? Yep.
I just want to make a point that the two incidents that you mentioned with regard to Ram, the first is when he asked his wife to go away. Now,
No, he doesn't. He tells his brother to take his
take her
wife
and, yeah,
away.
and sort of
That's
dump her
very
out.
different.
yeah, so basically at that point of time, what I understand is that his dharma as a king is to protect his country. Okay, fair enough. But if he was taking side of his wife, then it would not really impact his dharma as the king, because he had 3 or 4 brothers who could easily step in. He had just come back. So there was no reason the kingdom was not in danger if he performed his dharma as the husband, which he should have.
Very good.
Okay,
Yeah.
the first point. Second point is, with regards to Shambhuka, it is a little more complicated because a similar thing, I would say a very similar thing happened during the Indian independence movement, because Subhash Bose was elected as the president of Congress democratically, but Gandhi made sure that he did not get the post, he had to resign. Now, this is a point which is debated in my house quite a lot, and being a Bengali, it's always,
Of course, you
you know
come
which
out
side
of
we are on. But the point is, my dad explained sometimes that Gandhi had created a big movement, and if Bose takes over, then it becomes something else. So similarly, Ram had a system working for everybody. One person, whether righteous or not, is going to disturb the whole equilibrium. So one person sacrifice for the whole system to be working, because otherwise it becomes, the entire thing becomes like a, new thing.
So one time, well, both times in Uttarakhand, Rama chooses to be a king, right? In the first place by asking, having his wife sent off to the forest because people are gossiping. And the second time because that one halal jo hoti hai na, the one thorn can...
No, but I don't think, here I have a different point of view, because being a king does not mean exactly following rules, because that, had there been automation, it would have been an automatic king. Google would have been the king. You have to take a decision, and you are supposed to rule. By rule means you take a call.
Okay,
where
all
I'm
right,
not sure.
it's his responsibility.
So, yeah,
Okay,
so
all
to
right.
show the way is also something.
Okay, somebody else, yes. This side, nobody wants to say anything. All the okay. Sorry.
So I've been hearing this tale over and over since childhood, how Ram sent away his wife or asked Lakshman to send her away. So I'm just curious, does Rama not care about facts? I mean, you can...
About what?
Facts. Like what the fact is. Because dharma or morality comes from the fact that you do or deliver justice by taking facts into consideration. So if there's no fact around it, how do you define dharma, or how does dharma come in the first place at all?
This is a great conversation. I mean, who knows what dharma is? The problem is we all try to behave as if we know what dharma is, right? And the sad thing for Rama is that he thinks he's always doing the right thing, but it turns out to be terribly wrong. Unlike in Mahabharata, where you don't know what the right thing is, yeah? So you make mistakes. In Ramayana, you know what the right thing is, you do the right thing. But the consequence is, unfortunately, quite the opposite. Oh, but I want to go back to Shambhuka for a minute. I'm struggling with this idea that it's okay for Rama to kill Shambhuka because he violated a rule, okay? Now, and the young lady who said that, you know, back in the old days, they used to live by rules, and now we don't. I want to bring that into a contemporary context, yeah? If we were going to live by... it would not be possible for me to have read Ramayana. It would not have been possible for me to have translated Ramayana, right? Because I'm not supposed to have access to that text. Now, there are some things that we have to challenge, yeah? So Shambhuka, I think Shambhuka is actually quite an important figure. He's almost like a sacrificial figure. Because Shambhuka was killed, we are allowed to ask the question, was it wrong to kill Shambhuka? If he hadn't been killed, no, I'm now going to look this side. All these people have said enough. Nobody, yeah, okay, here, the schoolboy.
Okay, by killing Shambhuka, I think Ram did the right thing because the progress of the city depended on its 4 pillars, the castes, which did their work. But if one pillar gets just separated from the machinery, then the state would fall. It would not have the progress that it had before.
But Shambhuka was outside the 4 castes. He was an achut. He was well beyond. So he can do whatever he wants, don't you think?
But I think the Shudras or untouchables were treated the same thing.
No, he's not even a Shudra. He's an achut. He's beyond that. But anyway, that's a minor detail. I take your point that, you know, the 4 pillars have to stand, right? But do those 4 pillars have to be caste? Should we have a caste system today?
But okay, what else can be the 4 pillars?
Oh, it could be people who choose to be soldiers, not people who are born into Kshatriya Dharma.
Okay,
we choose to be journalists. We keep the government on its toes, not that we are born patrakars, you know.
Okay, do you expect a person of 5 feet height to be in the army?
Okay, do we expect a 5-foot-tall person to be in the army? Sure, they can run between the legs of the horses and, you know, I mean, you know, poke a spear up their bum or something like that. Very useful to have 5 feet people in the army, don't you think?
But there are some regulations in the army.
Okay, do you think they're caste regulations?
Okay, even I dream of being in the army, but I can't be. It's
Not yet. You haven't stopped growing. I mean, you know,
after I become 18, then also I can't be in the army.
Okay.
Okay, because I don't have the specifications that there has to be in the army.
No, I take your point, but the larger question is, should we be restricted from doing what we want to do because we are not appropriately formed, or we're not appropriately educated, or we are not... Look at Smriti Irani. I mean, everybody's been talking about Smriti Irani, right, for the last 7 months. Should she be the education minister? She hasn't finished 12th standard or whatever it is, you know. Does that matter? Yes, it matters? Okay. So then we're going back into this thing that, yeah, Rama was right to kill Shambhuka because he was doing the wrong thing. I find that very, very dangerous. I find that quite scary, actually, because then it'll be, "Arey, Musalman ko Ramayan nahi padhni chahiye, arey, usko ye nahi karna chahiye." You see the kind of road that we're walking down, yeah? So rather, I just always, I mean, what I was going to do, how do we judge what is right and what is wrong? And typically, we're only able to know after the thing has happened, right? Before, we're very clear about, "Arey, ye to karna hi hai," and then we do it, and then it's terrible. It's like, "Hai, galti ho gayi." But nobody sets out to do a galti. Nobody sets out to be a bad guy. Nobody says, "I want to grow up to be a villain." Well, maybe somebody does, but I don't know people like that, and maybe you don't either, yeah? So that again brings us back to this thing of like, what is Rama's role as the keeper of his people, yeah? Dasharatha chose to honor his husbandly role. Rama got very agitated by that. He decided to honor his kingly role. But when Rama acknowledges his kingly role and acts from it, we're critical of him. Are we critical of Dasharatha? Did Dasharatha do the right thing by sending Rama into exile? What is more important, to be an honorable man or to be an honorable public figure? What would you choose? Honorable man. So Dasharatha's right. Yeah. No, it doesn't matter. Well, Rama is just, the story is about Rama. So we feel sympathy towards it. But was Dasharatha right to privilege his love for his wife over his duty towards his son? And that's something we can all understand, because so often, whoever we are, whether we live in Ramayana time or whether we live, in 2015, love and duty often comes into conflict in our own lives. Yeah? So Dasharatha should be taken more seriously. We forget what might have happened to him. Yes? Oh, wait, so you've already said something. Is there somebody else? No, all of you have spoken already. Okay.
I want to contradict a few points because,
Yes.
First of all, it was not the love for his wife, it was more of keeping his word. So yes, more than being an honorable person, he was doing the thing by being an honorable public figure, because as a keeper of the people and as a king, he had to, because he made the promise.
This is Dasharatha? Who
Yes,
are we talking about?
This is Dasharatha, because he made a promise to his wife that he could only marry her if he fulfilled two of her wishes, and she could ask them at any point, at any given time, under any circumstances. So she chose to activate that wish, suiting her circumstance, because she wanted her son to be the successor. Secondly, when it comes to Rama, it was definitely not, he was a very, very tactful politician according to my standards, because everyone wants vote banks, and he wanted to keep his. So the Achoots are definitely...
He was a king. He didn't have a vote bank.
I mean to say
he didn't have to go out and tell people, make me king.
The thing is, the Achoots don't bother him, because they really don't matter or shift the four.
Wow, that's intense. Forget the Achoots. Forget anybody who's not a caste Hindu. They don't matter.
Exactly.
That's
my point.
scary.
Because that's what I'm saying. That's what he did. If it was a Brahmin and the case was reversed,
exactly,
it would be a hullabaloo completely.
Exactly.
So, and did anyone mention to check whether the Brahmin son who died and the corpse that was carried into the court had any relation to what the tapasya was regarding?
So is Rama a good guy or not? That's the question.
He's a good guy, but he did a bad thing. That's what I'm
So
saying.
is he still a good guy?
He's still a good guy, but
okay.
but the thing is, who punishes the king?
God punishes the king. Okay, so excellent. Thank you very much for that. Okay, then I want to introduce another bad person into the story.
You talked about Dashratha. You were talking about Dashratha. First of all, why did he have to make such a blank promise that it can be used against him or his son, whatever?
Because he loved her. You're leaving love out of the story completely.
No, she saved his life. He could have asked that you can ask, then I'll decide whether I give you that boon or not. First of all, it was against the dharma of a king, as well as it was against the dharma of a father to send Ram into exile. Now, if you fulfill one dharma, the other dharma comes in your way. That's what is happening in these cases. Similarly, Rama was right as a king, because the equilibrium would have been distorted. Suppose someone wants to go, no, I'll give potions, I'll become a doctor without being qualified for it. That's how it works.
Yeah. Absolutely. Okay. I want to introduce another bad person. Yes, and this gentleman here.
Some people are of the opinion that the Uttarakhand is an interpolation that really is not integral part of the Ramayana. And I'd like you to comment on that. Do you believe in that or you do not? Question number two, or comment number two is that in exiling Sita to the forest to live with Valmiki, Rama himself suffered a great deal. I think Uttarakhanda makes it very, very clear that he didn't enjoy himself after that. He did not go to the gardens as he used to do prior to sending Sita into the forest. So it's not something that he did whimsically.
Okay. Specific questions, so very specific answers. When you read Uttarakhanda in Sanskrit, you realize that it's not the same as the rest of the Ramayana. It's very, the language is very different. You feel that it comes from another place, from another time. It is very, very likely, it's almost certain that the Uttarakanda was composed much, much later than the rest of what we call Valmiki's text. But as a whole now, over the centuries, after 2,500 years, we're like, okay, it's part of the text. But we know, scholars feel, that it is an addendum, as it were. The second question, Rama's grief is explained most fully in Uttara Ramacharita, which is a much later play by Bhavabhuti. In Uttarakanda Ramayana, he's just, oh, well, she's gone, you know, I'll make a golden statue. He wasn't happy, but they don't expand on his grief quite as fully as the later playwrights do. Okay, I want to introduce one more bad person, Kaikeyi. Yeah, so when we're little and we hear this story of Ramayana, Manthara, she's a kubri, she's a hunchback, she's like this, she's like that. She went and she told Kaikeyi, she poisoned her mind. And then Kaikeyi, of course, has this magnificent moment, which I think only older women will understand. She opens her hair and she throws herself on the ground in this wonderful room called the Kopa Gruha. Right? The anger room. It's like, I'm so angry, don't even come near me, right? So she's lying there on the ground. She's torn off her pearl necklace, and Dasharatha comes to her and says, what is the matter? How can I make you happy again? Shall I send an innocent man to the gallows? Shall I release a man who is guilty? Yeah? So he opens the question, I mean, his encounter with Kaikeyi by asking a question about dharma, right? Which is very telling. And she says to him, you know, I have these two boons. With one of them, exile your son, your beloved son Rama, into the forest, and with the second boon, let my son Bharata be king, right? So now, for all of us when we're small and we're also listening to Snow White and Cinderella and all that, Kaikeyi is the perfect stepmother. She's Rama's stepmother. She's the wicked stepmother, right? Is Kaikeyi a bad person? What has Kaikeyi done? Really and truly, what has she done? She has secured the kingdom for her son. Which mother won't do that? Yeah? Isn't that what all mothers should do? Protect their children? Wouldn't you be really surprised if your mom said, "Acha, tum mere bache ho, tum ghar pe baitho, us dusre ko school jaane do." Yeah, we expect mothers to fight for the rights of their children. And of course, Indian mothers fight more for the rights of their sons than they do for their daughters. But that is another matter, yeah, that's for another panel. Was Kaikeyi wrong to ask Dasharatha for those boons? As a mother. Yeah? So it depends where you look at the person from, right? Like we said earlier, in relation to Rama, Vibhishana was a very good guy. In relation to his own brother Ravana, Vibhishana was a traitor. If you look at Kaikeyi in terms of Bharata, right, she was doing the right thing. She was making him king. But in terms of who is she wrong? She owes nothing to Rama. Right? Dasharatha has been foolish enough to give her these boons and said you can collect them whenever you like. She says, all right, man, I'm calling in my debt. Why is Kaikeyi the bad guy at all, in any way? Do you remember how she looks in Amar Chitra Katha? Does anybody remember the Amar Chitra Katha pictures of Kaikeyi? She is not looking like some Sati Savitri, you know, she's like quite a sexy thing, right? And Kaushalya and Shumitra all there with their ghungats and looking very pious and all that. Why? Why is she the bad guy at all? Yeah? So within the epics, within these larger stories that we've been told since we were children, right? And we've been told them in the same way over and over again. And because we've been told the stories, yeah, we never read the books. Oh, I know the story. My nanny told me. Oh, I know the story. I saw it on television. Oh, I know the story. I read it in Amar Chitra Katha. Nobody reads Ramayana, right? Or nobody reads Mahabharata. In fact, one of my favorite stories about my own Ramayana is that all my friends have it. Everybody, right? When it came out, they all bought it. It's lying there in their bookshelf. Badi si kitab aisi, you know, sabke samne drawing room mila. Arey, ye meri friend ki Ramayana hai and all that. The spine is not even cracked. Nobody's opened the book. Nobody's ever read it. Agar main upanyas likhti, if I'd written a novel, all my friends would have read it and said, oh, very nice, very nice. Ramayana, nobody reads. Arey, padhte kyun nahi? Arey, kahani to mujhe pata hai. I know the story. Why should I read Ramayana? But the fact of the matter is, it's when you read Ramayana that you start to see how complicated choices are. Yeah, and how hard it is really for Rama to be the good guy. How hard it is for Sita to be. Is Sita a good wife? Yes? That's why we're always told in Indian culture, "Arey Sita ke jaise bano," no? Everybody wants their wife to be like Sita. She goes with you to the forest, कोई उसे उठा के ले जाता, रोती नहीं, कुछ नहीं, आ जाती है घर पे, फिर उसको दोबारा तुम उसको हकाल देते हो करते, still she's smiling. This is the kind of wife we're supposed to be, right? Okay, so let's look at the Sita in another way. When Sita is asked, when Rama says, "I'm going to the forest," he comes to his mother, Kaushalya, and he says, "I've come to say goodbye because I'm going to the forest." And she said, "Don't be silly. What do you mean you're going to the forest?" And he says, "Well, my father has exiled me, and so I must go because I have a duty to obey my father." And Kaushalya says to him, "What about your duty towards me? What about your duty to obey your mother? Don't you have that duty as well?" And Rama's a bit confused, but he says, no, it's very important to listen to my father. And Kaushalya also says, she says, your father never loved me. I was going to be important only because you were going to be king. You are taking that opportunity away from me. And Rama says, "I'm sorry, I've got to go," right? So we respect Rama for obeying the wishes, the very difficult things that his father is asking him to do. But we forget that in obeying his father, he has hurt his mother terribly, okay? All right, Sita. So he tells Sita, "All right, I'm going to the forest." And she's like, "Well, I'm going to come with you." And he says, no, the forest is a bad place. It's not a place for women. You'll be unhappy. So the first time we see Sita, this so-called submissive paradigm of virtue, this woman that Indian culture holds up, the first time we see her, she's arguing with her husband. And she's saying, "You know what? Whatever you're asking me to do, I'm not going to do it." Yeah? So next time somebody tells you be like Sita, tell them this story also, that Sita is not the one who's like, "अच्छा, मैं सर झुका के आपके पीछे पीछे चलूँगी, मैं तुम्हारे साथ आने वाली हूँ, तुम जो भी करो मैं तुम्हारे साथ आने वाली हूँ." Right? Okay. The good Sita, she has this magnificent speech at the Agni Pariksha when he says, "I don't want you anymore. Go wherever you like," right? Just before the Agni Pariksha, he says this amazing thing. He says, "Go to Bharata, go to Lakshmana, go to Sugriva, go to Vibhishana, go to anybody. I don't want you." And this is in Valmiki Ramayana. I'm not making it up, right? You should all go buy my book and read it. And at that point, she says, "How dare you talk to me like this? How dare you speak like a tuchha admi? You are a great king. You should have more respect for me." She said, "I've been married to you for so long, and that makes no difference," okay? So this is another Sita when somebody tells you, Sita is very good. She tells her husband, "How dare you speak to me like this," right? And the most important part of Sita for me is when, she's, as you all know, she has her sons in the forest. The sons come back, they're singing this beautiful story at the Ashwamedha Yagna. Rama's listening to it, and at some point he says, the point at which the boys are telling about the banishment of Sita, he says, "Wait a minute, whose story is this?" Right? Which is kind of interesting that he hasn't recognized himself up to this point. And the boys say to him, "This is your story." And he said, "Is your mother Sita?" And they're like, "Yeah." And they said, "Okay, well, go and bring her." So when she comes back, he says, "The last time you were proven chaste was not in front of my people. It was in front of the monkeys and the bears and the Rakshasas. These are my people. Prove your chastity one more time." No Agni Pariksha, nothing. She doesn't look at him. She doesn't raise her head. In her mind, she says, "If I'm pure, Mother Earth, take me away." Yeah? In Agni Pariksha, she had said, "If I'm pure, bring me back." So the Sita who leaves Ramayana at the end, the one who leaves forever, the one who breaks Rama's heart, is a woman who says, "I will no longer live with a man who's insulted me like this." Yeah? So if all the patriarchy that sort of undermines Indian culture wants us to be women like Sita, just remember that this is her final act, yeah? That she goes away. She leaves a marriage that she cannot respect anymore, right? So is Sita a good person? Yes. Aditya, yeah. I can't hear you.
On. She was so unhappy with the whole affair that she's been continuously asked to prove herself, that she told Mother Earth that I had better sink into you if I am pure.
Not I will sink into you. Come and take me away.
Come and take me away,
Which is
yes.
not shame. It's the opposite
No,
of shame.
it was not shame. It was just that she was so unhappy with the whole thing. And these two episodes from Ramayana and Mahabharata, the
Vasraharana and this
and Sita's purity being measured, these two events have been singularly responsible for the many ills of women in today's society. Because a lot of things, a lot of problems that women have to bear is related with Sita ke saath bhi to hua, Draupadi ke saath bhi to hua. So these two singular events coming from such dharma following families, Yudhishthir and his brothers, and Ram, the ideal man, I think they are setting very bad examples for women of today.
I think they're setting a great example.
No,
Leave a marriage
they
that you
are
can't stand.
responsible for the ills of women. Lot of women today have to go through that Agni Pariksha. Because Sita went through that Agni Pariksha.
I'll tell you another Ramayana
There
story
have been
that I love.
cases in the newspaper where women have gone and the husband has asked her to do an Agni Pariksha just because she left without asking him.
Yeah. Okay, I just want to, there's another Ramayana story the two Ramayana stories that I love to tell. One is somebody told me once that in eastern UP, they say, "Arey yaar, apni beti ki shaadi wo Ayodhya mein mat karna, kyunki look at the way they treat their women." Right? Which I find that very, very interesting, that is how much we have internalized Ramayana, right? That we talk about our own daughters like that. And the other lovely Sita story that I want to tell is in Adhyatmya Ramayana, which is a 15th or 16th century text, also in Sanskrit, but possibly from the region that we now call Kerala. In Adhyatmya Ramayana, this conversation is going on. I want to come to the forest with you. No, you can't come. It's not a place for women. वहाँ बाघ होते हैं, वहाँ चील होती है, वहाँ ये वो, वहाँ तुम्हें खुश नहीं रहोगी. I'll have to protect you. This time, finally, Sita says to him, she said, "Have you heard of any Ramayana in which Sita doesn't go with Rama to the forest?" Yeah? And that is her clinching argument in a text that knows older stories of the Ramayana, right? So the point is that even Ramayana is not convinced of what is right and what is wrong. Yeah, we have many Ramayanas. We have Valmiki Ramayana, which is the oldest and in Sanskrit, but every Indian language chooses to tell this story, right? We have Ramayanas that have been told by women. We have Ramayana songs. We have Ramayana folk tales. We have Ramayana paintings, right? So each Ramayana is still grappling with the same questions. Did Rama do the right thing? Is Sita somebody who's submissive, or is she somebody who's really very powerful? Is she a Devi, or is she an ordinary woman who is defeated by circumstances? Yeah? What do we do with Kaikeyi's actions? Right? Why is Kaikeyi held up as an example of what not to do? Right? And why do we, of course, we know why we concentrate on Sita's submissive aspects in Ramayana, because, that's the way society would like women to be, right? So the only thing I can say at the end of this thing of do good people do, what happens when good people do bad things and when bad people do good things is, the problem is the thing is never good or bad in itself. It's what it results in that allows you to judge it as good or bad. And so it's the same sort of, we're asked to respect Sita, I think, for the wrong reasons. I think we're also asked to respect Rama for the wrong reasons. Rama is Maryada Purushottama, right? And we are told that Rama is Maryada Purushottama, the perfect man, because he always did the right thing. For me, it's much more interesting to think that Rama deserves our respect, not because he always did the right thing, but because he tried to do the right thing. he wanted to do the right thing, and he did very difficult things. He gave up his duty towards his mother so that he could obey his father. He abandoned his wife so that he could be a better king to his people. All the things that would hurt him personally the most are the things he did because they were for the greater good. So Rama is not a nice guy because he abandoned Sita. He's a nice guy because he tried to be a better king. There's one more hand, one more question which I'll take, and then I have just a few more minutes and I'll wrap. Yes, yellow scarf. Microphone, please.
Hello. Just one point that you just made, just want to ask you. You said Rama, by obeying his father, he terribly disturbed his mother. Now I'm saying, had it been the other way around, the history would have said, oh, Rama was the very tactful person, because had he done the other way around, so Mama, I'm going to obey you because if I don't, I'm just going to obey you because if I don't do that, the history would take it the other way around. So which means, had he not obeyed his father, he would, I don't know what the history would have written about him, but you got my point, right?
Yes, I did get your point. No, I mean, unfortunately, the bottom line, I can sit here and turn blue in the face and say that, oh, Sita is so charismatic and she's so brave. And it's a patriarchy, man. The man's position is always going to be the right position. We're still going to have to fight that. But there are other ways to think about it, and there are other ways to empower ourselves, and there are other ways to think about being good, not in the standard ways. Okay, I think I'm out of time, so I will thank you all very much. Thank you for bearing with me through, something that was really quite difficult.
Thank you so much. We'd like to present you with a small token of a little something. We will be having the Pushkin Prize at 4:30 at the same venue. We hope to see you again. Thank you so much.